This is Jim Fetzer in Madison, Wisconsin, joined by Giuseppe Vafanculo from the District of Criminals and David Scorpio from the exotic land of Ecuador. We are here to share with you all the news you need to know. We begin with Barr making the statement, no evidence of fraud that had changed the election outcome, which has shocked many. As we'll be reporting tomorrow, there may be an alternative story. It appears that when you read between the lines, he's actually strengthening Durham's ability to move against those who may have been involved in the election and qualified his observation as to what we have seen so far. Hence, it may not be the form of betrayal many might initially suspect. Here's a statement from the Trump legal team. This is Rudy and Jenna. With all due respect to the Attorney General, there hasn't been any semblance of a Department of Justice investigation. We have gathered ample evidence of illegal voting in at least 6 states, which they have not examined. We have many witnesses swearing under oath they saw crimes being committed in connection with voter fraud. As far as we know, not a single one has been interviewed by the DOJ. The Justice Department also hasn't audited any voting machines or used their subpoena powers to determine the truth. Nonetheless, we will continue our pursuit of the truth through the judicial system and state legislatures and continue toward the Constitution's mandate in ensuring that every legal vote is counted and every illegal vote is not. Again, with the greatest respect to the Attorney General, his opinion appeared to be without any knowledge or investigation of the substantial irregularities and evidence of systemic fraud. Meanwhile, the massive evidence just continues to accumulate. Trump ballots defaulted and switched to Biden votes on the Dominion system. This would be out in Maricopa. The GOP head of one of the country's largest counties and a veteran elections worker submitted her testimony in a sworn affidavit that her Democratic partner witnessed more than once Trump votes default and shift to Biden when they were entering votes into Dominion machines from ballots that couldn't be read by machine. She alleged she was later threatened by election supervisors at the Maricopa County Tabulation and Election Center for speaking out about what she had witnessed. This is a report she made to the Arizona state legislators on Monday. A lot more is going on of this kind in the various states that are involved here. I was told at that point in time I could not discuss anything or talk about what was going on. Many people were threatened. They were told that their voices would be suppressed. They'd have to leave the room, not work there again. I'm here because I think this is our duty to speak the truth. This is very significant. She also said during testing and certification of the Dominion voting machines, she had refused to approve the certification of the Dominion system during a meeting with Secretary of State Katie Hobbs, because the machine had malfunctioned during the test and were shut down and reset by Dominion staff instead of corrected. She was given no explanation about the errors. The Trump team is on the job. Dominion has yet to respond. I think that this is going on across many states. Giuseppe, your thoughts?
Well, Jim, it's clear from the tidal wave of evidence that Donald Trump won a landslide re-election. So many instances of egregious voter fraud and tampering with the Dominion software are because he won so big that they have to literally stop and reset it because their subtle algorithmic cheats won't work. The best way to steal an election is when it's plus or minus 3%, right? In reality, Trump probably won somewhere in the neighborhood of 46 to 47 states. It's hard to believe California and New York would ever not be blue, but anything's possible. But the reality is it was so overwhelmingly Trump that they literally had to stop the election, unprecedented, cover the windows, and then reset the system so they could load a new phony algorithmic scenario. Outrageous, and I hope they prove it, they being the Trump team.
All right, you got it, Giuseppe. What they did was stop the vote, give him a huge boost, more votes than machines could tabulate to get him ahead, and then set the algorithm so that Biden thereafter would maintain a slight lead to guarantee he would come out victorious. Scorpio, your thoughts?
Yeah, that's just outrageous. And they had to do it in the dead of night when everybody was asleep on top of it, just because the level of fraud was so great. And frankly, I'm not surprised. I don't trust Barr. He's a deep state operative. Look at the guy's past. He's helped cover up all kinds of crimes for both the Bushes and the Clintons. He's following orders, and I have my suspicions about Rudy Giuliani as well. I hope he's serving the president properly. But President Trump, for whatever reason, seems to have a habit of surrounding himself with enemies. And I just hope this all pans out, because this level of fraud, if they get away with it, we will never have a legitimate election again.
Scorpio, you got it exactly right. And I share your concern on those various issues. Meanwhile, get this. Georgia Governor Brian Kemp's lawyers argue that protecting Dominion's trade secrets is more important than rooting out fraud. I mean, this is almost preposterous. The National Pulse found key text in a court order preventing the deletion of key records in Cherokee, Gwinnett, and Cobb counties, where Kemp, this is the governor of the state of Georgia, was listed as a defendant along with Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger in the civil action that was approved by the courts to preserve potential evidence of fraud. Defense counsel also argued that allowing such forensic inspection would pose substantial security and propriety trade risk to defendants, the order read. This is absolutely unbelievable. The pathetic appeal to protect Dominion was ultimately rejected by the courts, as a plaintiff suggested a process in which the software could be inspected lawfully. There's a groundswell of grassroots conservatives who are refusing to help the Republican candidates win in the Georgia Senate runoff unless the state Republican Party gets serious about the recount and vote audit. Donald Trump Jr., Students for Trump founder Ryan Fournier, and American Greatness senior fellow Ryan Roon are trying to head off this anti-GOP revolt at the pass. However, enraged conservatives are not having it. They are sick and tired of their elected officials refusing to stand strong and demand electoral accountability in the aftermath of third world style rigging caused by rapacious and crooked Democrats. Meanwhile, Democrats face voter fraud allegations after ballot review by the Democratic judge erased a Republican lead. Democrats are reportedly facing voter fraud accusation in an extremely tight New York congressional race, resulting in a Republican candidate having her lead over a Democratic incumbent completely erased. On election night, freshman Democrat Anthony Brindisi trailed Republican challenger Claudia Tenney by over 28,000 votes. Then, as mail-in ballots were counted in the coming weeks, Brindisi's deficit was erased, and he trailed Tenney by just 100 to 200 votes. That's when Oswego County State Supreme Court Justice Scott Delaconte, a Democrat, intervened, reviewing spoiled ballots that had been initially rejected, which gave Brindisi the lead by just 13 votes. Breaking. Sources on both Dem and GOP side confirmed the final count submitted by all 8 counties will show Anthony Brindisi ahead of Tenney by either 12 or 13 votes. Wow. This is despite the narrow gap. Brindisi responded to the judge's actions by declaring victory. This process and the integrity of our elections are critical to our republic. This judicial review has been fair, open, and honest. And I remain confident that voters' voices will be heard. Brindisi said, in January, I'll be sworn in and continue to work with both parties. Meanwhile, Tenney's campaign explained in a statement they essentially believe voter fraud gave Brindisi the edge. Campaign spokesman Sean Kennedy said, Governor Cuomo's unfair, unwise, and unilateral rules changes and administrative burdens overwhelmed our voting system and created this utter dysfunction. As a result, the law was not followed when ballots were challenged and tabulated in this election. The result remains far from resolved. Hundreds of ineligible ballots were illegally and improperly cast, including votes by the dead, non-residents, or unregistered voters. Those ballots should not and must not be counted. The hearing in court has already established that the current tally includes invalid votes and that the process to review and count the massive amount of paper ballots is fractured. Today's misleading and inaccurate tally is rife with errors and mistakes that must be rectified before this election is certified. It is far from final. Those are very appropriate statements. On Monday, all 8 counties delivered their first official cumulative vote and showing Tenney with the lead by just 12 votes. Tenney's lead was later corrected by a single additional vote after one county revised its final tally. However, the final winner will be decided by about 2,500 contested mail-in ballots. I mean, this is getting ridiculous beyond words. Giuseppe, your thoughts?
Well, Jim, these two stories, Kemp's lawyers arguing that the corrupt election hacking software of Dominion is a trade secret more valuable than a free and honest election, is the one bookend. And the other bookend is even at the regional House level, they're using the same tricks with Dominion, the algorithmic lies and claim, the Republican challenger had a huge lead. It's not going to dry up. The mail-in voting, especially with the fright in New York because of Fredo Cuomo murdering all those seniors in the nursing homes, a lot of people stayed home, and they weren't all just Democrats. So welcome to globalist clown world, where the elections turn out exactly the way the clowns want.
It's unbelievable. It's really, frankly, an obscenity. Scorpio, your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a great way, Giuseppe just put it, where the votes turn out just the way the clowns want. That's exactly right. And, this is getting so absurd to say that, oh, it's a trade secret on how the vote machines work. I mean, could it get any more in our face than that? I think we're at a point where these people don't care that we know that they cheated. They're so brazen and emboldened that they're just like, hey, deal with it. We cheated. Ha, ha, ha. And, isn't it interesting that Governor Cuomo won an Emmy Award for his performances during this COVID hoax, and he had time to write a book. So this guy is crooked as they come, and nothing he does surprises me anymore. And about this thing in Georgia, one last point is, all eyes on Georgia for the Senate race, because they're going to try to cheat and take those 2 Senate seats and then effectively get a majority in the Senate.
No doubt about it. I mean, I've observed from the beginning that the computer programs for counting votes is so trivial. It only takes a small number of lines of code to take a number n, add 1 to it, to produce a new number n+1. So that any claims to propriety or proprietary rights or secret technology is to conceal modes of theft. There can be no other justification, where it must be a matter of law that were voting machines allowed to be used in the future, their programs must be available for public inspection. In fact, the best move is to abolish them 100%.
That's a great
Return
point,
to paper ballots. Now, we've had a series of reports here that are completely fascinating. This is a fellow, Simon Parks, who's reporting that during the raid in Frankfurt, that 5 members of the special op teams were killed, that they actually captured Gina Haspel, who was there in Frankfurt directing the theft of the election from Donald Trump, that others were surrendering, but that Haspel's bodyguards put up a fight, that these guys were actually taken out, that Gina Haspel was wounded, that on a flight to Guantanamo under interrogation, she had a change of heart and decided it was in her best interest to reveal everything. So the report I have now is that Gina Haspel has been explaining exactly how the theft of the election was taking place in order to benefit herself. We have another report in which I have less confidence, claiming that high-level arrests and detainment have begun, including President Barack Obama having been arrested for espionage. Again, I say I do not have multiple sources for that. Meanwhile, we have Colonel Phil Waldrom, who's an expert on cybersecurity, discussing Dominion systems used in Arizona. And today, Sidney Powell and Lynn Wood were holding a press conference in Atlanta to talk about everything they have discovered. I think that's a significant development. I'm more confident about the Haspel and turning than Obama. Giuseppe, your thoughts?
Well, if to use a football metaphor, we really need a Hail Mary completion right now, and that would be it. If that they did indeed make a heroic raid and 5 brave Americans gave their lives for the sanctity of this republic, man, what a great story that would be. And that would literally open the biblical floodgates on every dual citizen traitor, on every globalist, and it would be fantastic. Now, I did use the metaphor Hail Mary, so we'll see.
Indeed you did. Scorpio, your thoughts?
Well, again, I have to be quite skeptical of this. I hope it's true, but this sort of reeks of the sort of patriot fantasy articles that are being floated in the internet right now. And all of us need to remember that there is disinformation that's specifically targeted towards the patriot community and people like us, of things that we want to believe, but are just pure fantasy. So like Giuseppe said, we'll just have to see how this plays out. But I don't believe for a minute Obama's in jail. Sorry. The cabal members that serve loyally and do as they're told, like Obama did, are given full immunity to any and all crimes. And unfortunately, I think we're a long way from anything like this happening, because after all, right now, this cabal has almost every man, woman, and child around the world wearing a mask.
Oh, Scorpio, you make such devastating points. Meanwhile, we'll be right back. Tucker Carlson could not have distressed me more by trashing those who are seeking to expose the 9/11 truth, even describing them as parasites. It was shocking to me. I watched his interview. I've been a huge fan of Tucker, but my enthusiasm is rapidly waning. He appears to be far more naive and uneducated about crucial issues such as 9/11 than he ought to be, given his prominent role in the media. Let us return. Not wearing masks in public is an act of domestic terrorism, declares the LA County health officer. This is pretty stunning stuff. If it were up to me, anybody not wearing a mask when they're out in public would be arrested, said Dr. Muntu Davis last week. That's an act of domestic terrorism and should be treated like one, where Davis has been the county health officer since 2018. Davis' declaration came as county public health officials have been faced with dramatically increased rates of transmission and potentially exponential growth of deaths in the coming weeks. Potentially exponential growth of death. Notice that's not claiming the deaths are occurring. Notice here the advertisement for a more aesthetically pleasing mask. I had to include that there. It's so telling. Limiting certain activity that can easily result in increased cases like outdoor dining at restaurants is done to try to get our case rate lower so we can move to a less restricted tier and open more businesses. Indeed, county supervisors last week barred out dining at restaurants, but didn't prevent Supervisor Sheila Kuhl from doing just that only hours after her vote for the ban. This is also insulting. The county also issued a new health order that went into effect Monday, saying residents are advised to stay home as much as possible. Always wear a face mask covering over their nose and mouth when they're outside their household and around others. The new order included changes to the existing health officer order, which I gather has no status under the law, that this is merely a recommendation and not, in fact, a requirement, but is generally interpreted otherwise. Gatherings, all public and private, with individuals not in your household are prohibited, except for faith-based services and protests. Occupancy limits at various businesses. All individuals at these sites are required to wear a face mask and keep at least 6 feet apart. Essential retail, 35% max occupancy. Non-essential retail, 20%. Personal care service, 20%. Libraries, 20%. Fitness centers, 50%. Museum, galleries, zoos, botanical gardens, 50%. Mini golf, batting cages, go-kart races, operating outdoors, 50%. Outdoor recreational activities, all of which require face coverings, except for swimming and distancing. Beaches, trails, and parks remain open. Gatherings at these sites with members outside your household are prohibited. Golf courses, tennis courts, pickleball, archery ranges, skate parks, bike parks, community gardens remain open for individuals or members of a single household. Pools that serve more than one household may open only for regulated lap swinging with one person per lane. Drive-in movies, events, car parades are permitted, provided occupants in each car are members of one household. Schools. All schools and day camps remain open, adhering to reopening protocols. K through 12 schools and day camps with an outbreak, 3 cases or more over 14 days, should close for 14 days. Close non-essential business activities, playgrounds, and card rooms. This is just insulting beyond belief. Giuseppe, your thoughts?
Utterly insulting, Jim. First, to refer back to Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson has a great life, a beautiful wife, 5 kids. He's paid millions of dollars annually to comment on the news, almost as much as we make, right? But Tucker realizes he needs to color between the lines, and that means no mention of 9/11, no mention of Zionism, no mention of false flags, and then he can keep his great life. That's Tucker's story. And secondly, the new LA County Health Officer, Dr. Muntu Davis, is sworn in. And notice that all 3 of those big pharma minions in close proximity are not wearing a mask.
Nice point. Scorpio, your thoughts?
Devastating observation there. Well, I guess it doesn't count for them. It's only for the little people. I think what's happened is they've shortened Tucker's leash. And it's like, do you want to keep your job? Like Giuseppe said. And so he's going to have to toe the line in, but he's free to mention Zionism all he wants, Giuseppe, as long as he praises it, just like the rest of the Fox crew,
Right.
like Sean Hannity. That guy licks Zionist boots every day. It's amazing. This domestic terrorist term, that doesn't surprise me because I've heard another term, biological terrorists. That's what they're going to start calling people who refuse to take the vaccine. You're a biological terrorist, and you're just a time bomb waiting to go off. This is just absolutely amazing. But I expect this propaganda to be amped up more and more over the coming weeks, because Christmas is coming, and that's the most hated holiday of all by the cabal, because it has a spiritual connotation to it as well. And it's really going to be up to the people not to put up with this, because these tyrants are planning on regulating every aspect of human life. This is just the beginning. if we allow it. And I couldn't help but laugh when they said only one person per lane in the swimming pools. Does that mean that you can spread COVID underwater? Maybe so.
Oh, it's all idiotic from a medical scientific perspective. This is sheer stupidity, but it's because it's political. They're imposing on us absurd practices that have no warrant whatsoever other than the politics of the situation. I agree with you, Scorpio, 100%. You've nailed it.
Could I interject one quick thing?
But of course,
in heavy chlorinated water, viruses are fragile, and there's nothing, not a single virus that's gonna be alive in a chlorinated public pool. It's just absurd.
Scorpio head, you wanted to add a further thought?
Just that, yeah, exactly. When you got chlorine, you're not going to pass anything. I don't think you're going to pass it underwater. I mean, they're just trying to make people afraid of everything that humans do. And we have to have the government to give us permission to do anything. That's where this is all going. People need to recognize that and stop complying.
I agree. They're trying to take away everything meaningful in life. Going out to restaurants, to theaters, to sporting events, socializing with friends and family. I mean, God bless it. This is absurd. And I think the public must not stand for this. It's insanity. It's complete insanity. It's a form of suicide in slow motion. Henry Makow has published what I think is quite a brilliant piece. What's now happening in the U.S. mirrors the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution. Will it be followed by a red terror? This is the test. If Trump retains the presidency, he's a genuine American patriot. But if it doesn't, it means he took a fall because he's beholden to the same people as the communists. The social contract guarantees personal freedom, democracy, and justice in exchange for the obligations of citizenship. No taxation without representation was the battle cry of the American Revolution. This contract has been severed by two world-changing events. First, the upgrading of the common flu to a pandemic in order to rob millions of their livelihoods and enact drastic political, social, and economic changes outlined in UN Agenda 21. Include the preposterous idea they can vaccinate the whole world against an ailment with no symptoms and a minuscule death rate, and exclude you from society unless you submit to a vaccination, which is no different than rape. Two, the blatant theft of the 2020 U.S. election with the complicity of the mass media, corporate America, Department of Justice, the FBI, and possibly Trump himself. Communists have been rigging elections around the world for decades. It's very hard to believe Trump did not know that George Soros Antifa was counting the vote. What does this mean? We have been egregiously betrayed. Clearly, a communist one world government is already in place. It's based at the UN, the WHO, the US Demon Rat Party, and China. It seeks total control over our lives combined with total surveillance. They have imposed an identical COVID template worldwide. Mass social distancing, lockdown, remote learning, plexiglass, floor signs, etc. The Masonic Jewish Satanist central banking cartel is behind all of this. They control all corporations. That's why their advertising promotes homosexuality, white displacement, and miscegenation instead of just a product. The ultimate goal is outlined in the Protocols of Zion, to dispossess and enslave humanity, starting with Europeans. It is indispensable to utterly exhaust humanity with dissension, hatred, struggle, and envy, even by the inoculation of diseases, by want, so that the Goyim accept our complete sovereignty in money and in all else. Protocols of Zion 10 through 19. We gave our national credit cards to people who want to destroy us. They create the medium of exchange, our money out of nothing as a debt to themselves. We could do this ourselves, debt and interest free, by abolishing the Fed. They intend to extend this monopoly over our credit into a monopoly over our souls. This cancer is the source of our problems. If Biden assumes power, we can kiss civilization goodbye. We'll see reality turned upside down. Truth, reason, merit, and justice will be replaced by communist shibboleths designed to destroy us. The American equivalent of the Bolshevik Revolution is happening right now. You can bet that if Biden gets confirmed, people who voted for Trump will be persecuted. Read James Perloff's article, Do Americans Face a Red Terror? Read what the Cheka did. The Democrats have already made noises about exacting revenge and re-educating 70 million Americans who voted for Trump. What if they decide it's easier to kill them? I am sounding an alarm. If Biden is confirmed, they'll come after conservatives. I wish I could say I thought he was wrong. Giuseppe, your thoughts?
Well, Henry Makow is an intense fellow, and you could argue that he's been watching Need to Know for the last 77 episodes, because everything he wrote, we have been saying for months now, and it's sad but true. And so, it's going to take extraordinary measures to fix this country and to retain our freedom as a sovereign republic. And you're not going to do it by voting. I mean, Makow is exactly right. And people just need to wake up somehow. Stop being goyim or human cattle. Start acting like responsible American citizens and fight for your freedoms.
Yeah, I thought it was a very concise, right on point article. Scorpio.
Yeah, Henry Makow really nailed it. And it's interesting to note that, Makow is another person that had a major falling out with Jeff Rentz. You might like to know, Jim. And, Red Terror, yes, that's coming, absolutely. All tyrannical governments use violence to achieve, their ultimate power. That's part of the end game when they're going for the complete power play. They have to use violence. Just study history. There isn't an exception to it in history, as far as I know. And once that power is achieved, once they have absolute power, they always purge the political dissidents and the political enemies as well. And then after they do the purge, the next step is genocide. There's no exceptions to this, as far as I know, in modern history, even ancient history. So, yeah, they're planning on making this permanent. People need to realize that. That's why the plexiglass is going up, and the permanent painted signs telling you to social distance, signs that are cemented into the sidewalk. This is intended to be permanent. People need to wake up and see that. Stop expecting things to go back to normal by complying. It's not going to happen. And as far as Biden goes, he will take a wrecking ball to Western civilization as we know it. He'll take a wrecking ball to all things traditional and American. It'll be an absolute disaster, and the mainstream media will cheer him on every step of the way.
It's a devastating critique, but I'm sorry I have no arguments to offer against it. Meanwhile, a murdered congressional contractor was performing emoluments violation audits exposing Joe Biden child trafficking, where his death appears to have been an assassination. Americans will be shocked at the level of pedophilia, satanic worship. Elle Wood drops a bombshell on live TV. Why did Democrats and Rhino Republicans pull at all the stops in an effort to steal the 2020 election from the American people who chose to keep President Trump in office when he defeated Joe Biden a landslide via legal, lawful ballots and votes? Because there's no redemption for the crimes against humanity perpetuated by organized satanic pedophiles against human beings, which was recently pointed out by attorney Lynn Wood. The satanic pedophilia is going mainstream. The assassination of Christopher Hallett, facts, circumstances, and evidence surrounding the November 15, 2020 murder of a Congressional Oversight Defense contractor in Marion County, Florida, no longer appears to be a simple case of murder, but rather a political assassination. Powerful evidence is rapidly emerging that the shooting of Christopher Hallett, CEO of E-Clause, appears to be a pre-planned, calculated assassination involving matters of national security. Hallett, 50, was a loss prevention specialist and constitutional law expert who was authorized by the U.S. Congress to perform audits for the government regarding emoluments violations. Extensive and detailed documentation, including court records and filings, show some of the emoluments violations investigated, documented, and properly filed by Hallett to the Senate Judiciary Committee under Lindsey Graham, as well as to President Trump, exposed an international child trafficking operation connected to Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and the Biden family criminal cartel. Hallett's findings involved emoluments violations that were supporting child trafficking operations, described a child harvesting operation utilizing organized crime operatives working within the American legal system, such as bar attorneys, family courts, and licensed state agencies, such as Child Protective Services, corporate police, doctors, and others, to kidnap babies and children from their parents without due process of law. For example, one set of Hallett findings was in regard to emolument violations by bar members and law enforcement in Florida and Minnesota, who conspired to improperly, illegally, unlawfully use their position to kidnap an award-winning news reporter and FBI witness from Minnesota named Timothy Charles Homseth, who uncovered evidence of the international child trafficking operation and CPS kidnapping. Official records with the Florida Barr and State Attorney's Office revealed someone desperately wanted Hallett stopped. One of the people who wanted Hallett stopped is a woman named Alexandria Goddard. Hallett possessed a video, which he shared with the Florida Supreme Court, that captured Goddard acting as an agent of a principal for whom she, Goddard, commits crimes. On January 17th, Ghanaian Oaxaca Bar Council of Florida Bar sent a letter to the office of the state attorney in Ocala regarding an unlicensed practice of law investigation stemming from a complaint the bar received from Alexandria Goddard. Goddard recently went online during a live stream by alleged child rapist and serial killer William K. Murtaugh, Filthy Murt, and requested the public mail Homseth a copy of the Satanic Bible and provided a mailing address to a third party's home. It goes on, where the evidence shows a massive extortion scheme at work in the United States and abroad, involving a vast organized network of identified cyber stalkers that conspire together with other media, including the Daily Beast, to slander, defame, and libel the target, conspire with social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, to remove content published by the target. The background, association, and moral turpitude of Alexandria Goddard is likely to come into sharp focus during both federal and Department of Defense investigations, while formal investigation by law enforcement and the U.S. military jurisdiction on international trafficking will surely reveal the associations and motives of Goddard. There presently exists evidence that Goddard's actions are both demonic and psychotic. The following screenshots are images sent by Goddard on Twitter, which she believes she is directing to a Twitter account operated by Timothy Charles Homseth. Use Adobe Elements to fabricate legal records and documents, conspire to file false child protective complaints, conspire to have a targeted individual falsely arrested, host live shows where online forums are hosted to discover real-time targeting of individuals, create bogus websites, use to libel, slander, and defame, threaten the lives and safety of their targets, hack computers to steal private information, contact their targets' family, employers, neighbors, business clients, conspire to orchestrate massive call-ins and groups to file false reports. These are among the elements and techniques they're using that are documented in the investigation. Of course, that number is more than a month old. The true number of Americans who have been forced into poverty is essentially higher. This is what an economic collapse looks like. That, I fear, is from a separate story combined here. Giuseppe, this is bad.
Well, Jim, it's so ridiculously clown world that the gaslighting globalist media is barking constantly about 250,000 people have died of COVID-19. In reality, they died of their own poor health. And when they got their chest cold, it killed them a little sooner than later. But at the same time, last year, 2019 FBI statistics, 1 million children disappeared, kidnapped, stolen, taken into these unspeakable areas of torture, of murder, of sacrifice, of sex rings by satanic globalists. Allegedly, the Bushes, Cheney, Clintons, Obamas, Bidens, all involved. Podestas, allegedly, just as allegedly the sun rises every morning. That's how allegedly these subhumans operate. And that fella, Mr. Chris Hallett, was a hero. And it's sad that the Satanists can act with such impunity and just literally assassinate someone who has the goods on one of their low-level minions, that psychopath Goddard, the woman. So Jim, that's the reality that we face. And yet if you tune in to the lies of the gaslighting mainstream media, you have no idea.
Well, you got that right, Giuseppe. Scorpio, your thoughts?
Well, that's true what Giuseppe said, and they've conditioned people's minds to think that this sort of thing is, not possible. Nothing like that could ever happen. But the reality is, we are in a battle against unspeakable evil, and I don't even want to go into the details, but of what happens at these rituals to children, to even to young infants. I mean, this is just unspeakable, and there's a spiritual component to this. We really are in a battle, a spiritual battle against pure evil. And it's time that people understand that and shed this mind control that they've been under to think like a little child and to have a childlike view of the world and be completely clueless as to how the world actually works and the kind of people that are actually running the world. And as far as this economic collapse, I believe that it's being orchestrated on purpose. It has to happen in order for them to get their great reset. And the only thing that can stop it is if people refuse to go along with these shutdowns and just open their business and say, come get me. I dare you. That's what it's going to take. And people have got to stand up and fight now. Absolutely.
I think you're right, Scorpio. I think you're absolutely right. Meanwhile, a Trump documentary director, we're still living in the coup. The documentary follows Representative Devin Nunes as he uncovered an alleged operation to bring down President Trump. The conspirators include political operatives, the highest law enforcement and intelligence officials in the country, especially the press. The documentary, based on the best-selling book of the same title by Lee Smith, an investigative journalist and senior fellow at the Hudson Institute. The plot against the president. The president and this administration was an injection of something new. So, of course, the corrupt industries were going to resist, and every single institution would turn against us. Every single agency that we went to work would hate us. And we would think that we were against the mission of the agency when actually we were probably the best thing for the mission of the agency in its original, meaning uncorrupted sense. Before starting the film, Milas worked for a Trump administration at both state and the White House. She has firsthand experience of what it's like working in government institutions. Twitter suspended the official account for the film last Thursday, but did not provide a specific reason except that it violated the platform's rules. The Twitter suspension, however, was reversed the next day. We're still living in the coup. We really are, Amanda Milas, director observed. Milas pointed out that something is happening that might cause us to lose our freedoms if we don't act now. We're in the water that's already hot, like we're already boiling, to use the analogy of the frog in a pot, turning up the temperature just 1 degree at a time until it's cooked before it knows it. We don't have a justice system. We don't have an intelligence community that works for us. They work against us, and they just punish us if we have the wrong ideas and scare people and operate on fear like the secret police they are. It was weird because there was no warning. my latest complaint about Twitter suspension. And the moment we allow things like that to happen is when we all go down the drain. I think it's simply ridiculous. The media pretending they didn't just engulf the country in a fake story for 4 years, which is amazing. Talking about the Russia hoax. It's a very dark day for America. It's basically like being bombed by your own aircraft carrier. That's what happened. However, she still expressed optimism and encouraged every person to have the obligation to tell the truth and tell it loudly, because that's how a movement starts. Giuseppe, your thoughts?
What a great interview, Milius. This really speaks the truth, and I love her line. It's a very dark day for America. It's basically like being bombed by our own aircraft carriers. That is what's happening because the globalist media, the globalist control of our own government, they are our enemies. They are attacking us, and they do not like people speaking the truth. What's encouraging is Makow, Milius, the many others we cover. People are saying enough is enough and speaking out. And hopefully this is the proverbial snowball rolling down the hill that turns into an avalanche that sweeps out all these dual citizen traitors, all these malignant satanic globalists once and for all.
That's a wonderful metaphor. Scorpio, your thoughts?
Yeah, there are some encouraging signs. Like, for example, if you go on some of the World Economic Forum's videos, the thumbs up to thumbs down ratio is incredible. They'll have like maybe 2,000 or 3,000 thumbs up and 25 or 30,000 thumbs down. So more people than we think know the score. They just want to try to keep us all separated. That's why they want social distancing and make us feel like we're all alone and isolated, when the truth is there's many, many more people that know what's going on, but they're afraid to speak out. So it's time for us to lose our fear and join together and speak out against this absolute evil that's coming at us like a freight train. And, you know, as far as this censorship goes, it's going to get worse. And I think the end game will be where any ideas that contradict the official narrative will be purged. People need to see that that's what's coming. This idea of, oh, you're not following the social guidelines of our platform. That's all a bunch of hogwash, as my grandfather used to say. And yes, the mainstream media is the enemy. It's there to poison your mind and to feed you disinformation and nothing else.
Well, it's just amazing, the corruption of the media. I mean, in the last couple decades, it's been overwhelming, and it's just increased at a more and more rapid rate. Just absolutely mind-boggling. Meanwhile, Corsi, Trump wins 100% certain brace for the end game. How about a thought of positivity here? We're entering the end game of the 2020 election. The deep state coup d'etat that began on June 16, 2015, the day Donald Trump came down the escalator in Trump Tower to announce his candidacy for president. This book presents compelling evidence that the goal of the deep state was to steal the election for Vice President Biden and Senator Kamala Harris. The fact the deep state intended to steal the election makes understandable why the Democrats nominated Joe Biden for president, despite his being a corrupt 78-year-old Washington establishment professional politician who shows signs of reduced mental capacity, apparent to many voters as an oncoming senior dementia. It also explains why the Democrats thought they could win by nominating as vice president Kamala Harris, a radical left socialist politician with a problematic personal history who was so unpopular with her own party, she was unable to win a single Democrat Party primary contest. But if the Democrats were going to steal the election anyway, it did not matter that Biden and Harris were perhaps the most unlikely to win a presidential ticket nominated by either party in decades. What is perhaps equally apparent is that on Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020, President Donald Trump won a historic election, a landslide election of historic significance in which he may have received 80 million popular votes and possibly 360 electoral historic numbers that would have easily assured him of a second term, provided the election had been conducted legitimately. In this ebook, I predict Trump will win re-election, but that's only because of what I always say. Donald Trump always looks like he's going to lose right up until when he wins. And in the end, God always wins. Those are great thoughts from Jerry Corsi. I would certainly like to believe they are true. Giuseppe, your thoughts?
Right. I mean, Jerome Corsi, he's a flowery, eloquent man, and I've enjoyed watching his interviews over the years. And but he's going out on a line. That's a bold prediction, and I too hope it's true. I mean, Biden and Harris, which will mean probably within 18 months, President Harris, which is an absolute nightmare for the real citizens of this United States. It's going to champion the weaponized lunatic minorities and the globalists. So I hope Dr. Corsi's right.
Scorpio, your thoughts? You're muted.
Jim, you're older than Groper Joe. You have twice the energy and 3 times the mental capacity. So I'd much rather have you be our president than Groper Joe. I'll tell you what. And
That's right.
As far as Jerome Corsi goes, I hope he's right. But Corsi's family were very close with Edward Bernays. I heard him say that Bernays would come over to their family's house for dinner on a regular basis. So take that for what it's worth, but I hope Corsi's right. And we'll just have to see how this plays out, because we really are playing for all the marbles. And if Groper Joe does get in, we cannot accept the validity of his so-called presidency, and we can never stop saying it if he does get in, because this guy is an illegitimate president, and he is going to take a wrecking ball to Western civilization.
You're 100% correct, Scorpio. I hate to admit it. Meanwhile, we want to hear from you, fan mail, pro or con. Send to liveneedtoknow@gmail.com. liveneedtoknow@gmail.com. Here's a reckoning. He said the remedy is with civil courts, which it is, which is what Trump's lawyers and Sidney Powell are doing. The criminal punishment with Department of Justice will take years. Even then, only if we get a civil remedy and correct the results. Otherwise, it's going away if Biden gets in. A tweet from Lynn Wood. Emergency order just entered by Judge Timothy C. Batten Sr. Defendants are ordered to maintain the status quo and are temporarily enjoined from wiping or resetting any voting machines in the state of Georgia until further order of the court. Meanwhile, this is from one of my thoughtful commentators. The latest from Steve Bannon's War Room. U.S. mail trucker testifies he brought a trailer load of filled-in ballots from New York to Harrisburg. There were no envelopes, and the ballots were neatly stood up right in sorting bins, like they came straight from a printer to a sorting bin. No envelopes. When the driver arrived at his usual drop-off, someone he did not know was working there. The driver sensed something was not right when he was instructed to drive the trailer to Lancaster and leave it there overnight. The trailer vanished the next day, and no one seems to be missing one. Plus, more stories of poll watchers intimidated, hazed, and thrown out. There can now be no legitimate separation between the Kung Flu story and the subsequent mask-wearing craze, which sets up the rioters' hidden identities and facilitates their looting and arson in a way that's no accident. And think what keeping the Kung Flu omnipresent in everyone's minds did for pushing the mail-in ballots. More than this, it facilitated the cheating by keeping the poll watchers not only distant, but afraid to get all that close to anyone counting. The scamdemic and mask-wearing insanity played huge dividends for the demolition party over and over again. If you think the George Floyd killing wasn't strategically planned for maximum outrage, I have some nice waterfront property for sale in the Everglades, attractive terms and low down payment offered. Meanwhile, we know this isn't even the real guy. We got the deep state traitor and pedophile on the one hand and the comedy genius secretly saving America on the other. Corruption shows up in everything Joe Biden touches, despite claims a former VP was helping his son and brother get rich with all sorts of back alley deals. Democrats still voted for him. Their whole vote blue no matter who worked. And now they have to deal with the corruption that comes with voting for literally anyone who wasn't Trump. Meanwhile, if your mind is now open to the prospect, you may want to take advantage of the False Flags and Conspiracies 2020 virtual conference this weekend, December 5th and 6th, which I have organized and will moderate, featuring 24 experts on events like JFK, 9/11, Sandy Hook, the Boston bombing, the 2020 election, the COVID-19 pandemic, the godfathers of sex abuse, Bill Cosby, Harvey Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein, staging hate crimes, Jussie Smollett, George Floyd, Bubba Wallace, high-tech censorship, and much more. I have authorized a 50% discount for the meeting, cutting the pay-per-view from $100 to $50. Check it out. This may be the most important intellectual investment of time and money of your life. False Flags and Conspiracies 2020. Use the discount code NTK for Need to Know. Check it out at the link, falseflagconspiracies2020.com, falseflagconspiracies2020.com. Remember, the secret of freedom lies in educating people, whereas the secret of tyranny lies in keeping them ignorant. Final thoughts, Giuseppe, yours.
Well, Jim, the clock keeps ticking on a civil court solution that has to run up the ladder to the Supreme Court. I noticed a fellow Revolution Radio host claimed that today a Pennsylvania court ruling was making its way to the Supreme Court. So hopefully sometime next week we start to get some action from the Supreme Court, because they're looking to certify that electoral college vote in just a couple weeks. So the sheer massive quantity of voter fraud in every state is more than enough to cause this election to be overturned, and hopefully the court does the right thing.
Well, Chief Justice Roberts is a fanatic about voter rights, and I think there's no doubt he would vote with the conservatives on this issue, he being the one most likely, I think, to shift. So I would predict a 6-3, given that the liberals on the Supreme Court don't appear to have any principles. I'm very distressed to say that. In a legitimate Supreme Court, the ruling would be 9-0. We shall see. Scorpio, your thoughts?
Well, I think the liberals' principles revolve around anal sex and pedophilia. That's just my take on it. And, here's the thing, that this level of corruption that we're seeing in the United States and in governments around the world, it will end up destroying itself over time. That's the good news. The bad news is we don't want to let these corrupt individuals take down our civilization with them. So it's time for us to stand up. And I hope this Supreme Court thing works out. I hope they're able to make this happen. Because if they get away with this, there'll never be a legitimate election in the United States again. People need to see that, even the people that don't like Trump. So let's just hope for the best here, guys.
Well, this is Jim Fetzer in Madison, Wisconsin, thanking Giuseppe Vafanculo from the District of Criminals and David Scorpio from the exotic land of Ecuador. Scorpio has it right. If Joe Biden is inaugurated on 20 January, that is the beginning of the end, not just of the United States, but of freedom and liberty around the world. The Great Reset will be on its way. They'll absorb all the property, all the assets of every human being on planet Earth. We will have no future except living as serfs and slaves. If you believe, as I do, live free or die, that will be the trigger to initiate armed resistance by American patriots, where the tree of liberty must be periodically flourished by the blood of patriots. Stand strong, be ready, stock in supplies. If you don't know how to use weapons, learn, because nobody's going to be there to defend you. They're defunding the police. They're trying to remove every protection for civilization, for citizens who've only cared about living their own lives without interference. We may no longer have the choice. The trigger will be 20 January 2021. Be prepared. Jim Fetzer, thanking you for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow with the news you need